Hey guys, I'm Corey. He's Such. This is the Third Perspective podcast. This will be episode 31. Thanks for coming along on our journey today. And just a reminder, all opinions here are expressed our own. Such, how you doing?
I'm awesome, bro. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. We do have a special guest in today, Mr. Deven Kennedy. Deven, welcome.
How's it going, bud?
Not too bad. So, Deven, I know you have sort of a multifaceted CV here, as it were. Quite a bit of stuff here. You are the owner and proprietor of Resilience Through Fitness, Inc. You're attached to a small police service in Nova Scotia. You're a nutrition coach. You're a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want to ruin it all. But I know you also have an Instagram and a whole lot of other stuff. But I'm really excited to get to know you, get to know what makes you tick, what your background is, all the rest of it. So I think without further ado, rather than me butcher your backstory, I think I'd love to hear it from you. So without further ado, Deven, why don't you let our listeners know who you are?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me on and getting me on. I've been following you guys ever since like the first episode. I followed Satch's journey whenever he was running all over Hell's Half Acre. So yeah, it's really humbling to be on the podcast. So yeah, I come from a small town in PEI, super like fishing and fireman community. I grew up in a policing family, and my mother was a doctor of natural medicine and acupuncture. So I grew up pretty kind of in tune with my body, but didn't appreciate it. Kind of, you know what I mean? Like, father was a Mountie for 32 years. I always wanted to be a police officer. Kind of every decision I made was kind of going that route. Eventually, I got in at 23. Still, just that classic rookie. Thought I was invincible, and probably didn't take care of myself as much as I should have, and I didn't. I've realized more and more how much first responders, we're always trying to take care of, you deal with the call, you don't decompress after, you don't decompress in a healthy way or have a healthy outlet. And slowly over time, you kind of have those, starts to show and starts to wear on you. So, kind of fast forward, I got 10 years in now. I did 5 years with an organized crime unit. I went back on the road during COVID to boost the numbers to the street. And that's kind of where the wheels started to come off, really. I had my best buddy. Actually, I lived in his basement whenever I was a rookie. He had a little basement apartment, so we were super close. Real traumatic call. He got it was a domestic assault, and he ended up getting stabbed in the neck. So he pulled through and made a recovery back to duty, but it was pretty touch and go. There was a week-long manhunt trying to find the suspect that fled on foot. So it was pretty crazy little stretch there with that. And then it wasn't really that kind of like we dealt with that, and kind of he was off for a bit, came back, and then we were actually partnered up, and he was my supervisor then. And then I ended up having an incident, an impaired driver call, super standard call. And within 2 minutes, I was over the hood of a truck. Shit just went sideways, really. And then all of it, nothing really set in. And then all of a sudden I noticed after a few days, even, I was like, I'm not good. Like, something's not right. And then it just kept getting worse and worse. And I just started to really quickly start to spiral. So yeah, I noticed like I was having a lot of that kind of post incident where my body was just shutting down. I couldn't, if I hear a siren, it would just shut down. I'm like, what's going on? And I would just like almost, I'd be having a conversation and I'd hear the guys going to a call, and I'd be at the gym, and it would just kind of whitewash over, and I'd zone right out of the conversation. If I was in a room with too many people, I'd get super panicked, and I was like, okay, something's not going on. Something's not right. So they ended up seeking some help, and then kind of working through the process. But the main thing, and the big reason why RTF started, was the gym was that constant. I kept at the gym. I made sure every day at 10 o'clock I went to the gym, and that was kind of my thing that I just got there. And the facility, they were so good to me. They were amazing. So yeah, it really became a passion of mine, like realizing that fitness was a big factor in how I came out of the incident with only a broken foot, as opposed to the truck going right over me. I kind of was able to box jump over the hood. So I feel like just fitness, it's been such a huge factor in how I was able to make it through the incident, but also how I was able to recover from it and hopefully help others along the way now. So.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack there, which we'll
Yeah.
do, but you said that, obviously after the incident, you started noticing stuff. Was there anything that was looking back, was there anything that you saw that perhaps maybe it wasn't, the incident itself, but maybe something, maybe further back that you were not looking after yourself, as you said?
Yeah. So I think I know whenever I had that, the plainclothes belly started, right? So whenever I was a rookie, it was 185 pounds at the academy. And then I did a couple of years on the road, and then I got into the plainclothes position. And you're doing surveillance, you're on the road a lot, and you're out on the weekends and this and that. So I ended up going up to 235 pounds. So I put on a good couple LBs, and other than all I was doing was playing hockey, I wasn't really training a lot. And then I just kind of was like, I could kind of see I wasn't taking care of myself enough, and I was like, I got to make a change, right? But I didn't. I swore against CrossFit. I was like, I ain't doing it. It's not happening. So the local gym here is it's a 12,000 square foot facility, and it's a CrossFit facility. And they have open gym. They have like a therapy clinic there and everything now. But it was actually my partner in Intel that signed me up for the intro class. He's like, hey, you start CrossFit in October. And I was like, no, I don't.
Why do you think he signed you up?
You know what? I think he knew I needed it. He was like, yeah, man, like you're going. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he's like, yeah, well, Joel's calling you and you're going to be going. And I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll go, and I'm not going to like it. And I loved it. So I was like, shit. so
I guess there's a reason why he's in Intel, eh?
Yeah.
Well, one of the two had to be smart, right? So he was the smart one. Yeah. So that's really kind of how it happened. But and then it was just kind of really enjoyed it. And now I'm doing a lot more running and things like that. But yeah, that was really what started it.
I had a couple. Sorry to interrupt. I just had a couple quick questions just so I can understand a little bit better. So you said when you started, you were in and around 180 pounds, and then you went up to about 235 pounds. How tall are you?
6'2", 6'1".
Okay.
6'2", so.
So you were a skinny 180 pounds.
Oh yeah, buddy. There was more than me. Oh yeah, I had I still got tiny shoulders, but I had some shoulders like a brook trout, right? Like I was skinny. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because I was just wondering, I'm like, holy, that's a big sort of range. I wonder how tall you are. So either way, you're deficient. You're super skinny. Holy moly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Questions. So Deven, a question for you. Now, obviously, like you said, you were enjoying fitness and things like that after the fact. Do you think you would have was that a passion of yours to begin with, or was it something that you think that you enjoyed because of the incident, because of what was going on?
Yeah, I definitely fitness became really it just became like an outlet, like a healthy outlet, because you think in policing and in first responders and stuff, right? There's that mentality, right? Like, whatever, have a pint and we'll be fine, and this and that. Nothing against having a pint, but you got to have a healthy way of dealing with the stress of the job. And if you don't, it's cumulative. So it eventually will build up. And I wasn't unpacking stuff. I was just putting it off, and pushing it to the side. And then eventually, whenever the incident happened, that's whenever my body was like, yeah, bud, you remember those last 10 years of just shoving her away? And then the incident with the stabbing and just, no, I'm not talking about my feelings. I'll never get a promotion or this and that. And my body just was like, yeah, you're taking some time, you're done, right? So I think that was a huge factor. But then using fitness as a way to retrain my body, because what happened was my central nervous system all of a sudden was out of whack. I couldn't regulate between my sympathetic and my parasympathetic. If anything triggered my sympathetic, I'd have a panic attack, or I'd just go whoosh, right off the rails, panicking, and then I'd crash out.
The vagus nerve response.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that was and then I just started digging down into that and just kind of like reading more books on it and taking more courses and just really trying to like unpack like, okay, like this is a common thing with first responders, and how do we help other first responders break that stigma? And then, yeah, that's kind of how RTF kind of got born. Was it became such a passion. I was like, I love this. This is something that needs to be done.
So with RTF, was that in your head to begin with? Did you ever want to start this, or was it something like, how do you go from, I don't want to go to this CrossFit class I've been signed up to I'm going to create an entire brand that's going to help people? Like where's the step 2 in that?
Yeah. What happened? Well, RTF, the name, like Resilience Through Fitness. Honestly, it was going to be like a newsletter that I was going to, because I was taking one of the first courses that company Precision Nutrition had set up on. It was called Sleep, Stress, and Recovery Coaching. And I was like, well, that's like 90% of policing. We are first responders. We don't sleep. We eat like crap on night shift. We're stressed. And, like I was like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, that'd be good to help the other members that I know are struggling with this stuff, and myself. So I took that course and I was like, there's so much stuff in here. I should do like a newsletter. So I was thinking about kind of a catchy name or something that would be good for the newsletter. And I was like, I don't want to do a monthly newsletter. Like I want to do something more. And legit, middle of the night, one night I woke up and I was like, Resilience Through Fitness. That's I'm going to make a company. Like that's going to be it. And then I ran downstairs to now my office, but ran downstairs, scratched on this little notepad. And I was like, because I knew I'd forget about it in the morning, because I got the memory of a goldfish half the time. So I was like, there's no way, like I'll remember that in the morning. So I came back in the morning and I was like, all right, let's do it. So, and I started taking nutrition courses. I got my level 1 CrossFit coaching course. I'm working towards getting my certification for personal training, and it's like kind of a full-time part-time gig.
Yeah. Now I got a question that's I want Such to answer as well as you, Deven, but yeah. I sort of hear that holy trinity of fitness, nutrition, and sleep, right? Those are the 3 that, I think of every time I've ever had somebody come out and do a talk with us about what you're supposed to be focusing on. And obviously you've got certifications in those as well. You've got 10 years in, so you're not a rookie anymore, but if there is somebody out there who's a rookie and is starting to notice problems, if they only have, quote unquote, the time to focus on one of those holy trinities, what, in your opinion, and what is your opinion on this? What should they start focusing? What's step 1 out of those 3?
Ooh, my thoughts are fitness, because if you're focusing on your fitness, you have to be fueled. So you have to have your nutrition factor too. Otherwise, you're going to be, exhausted at the gym, and you're going to be burning out, and you're not going to be properly fueled. So I feel like if you're focusing on nutrition, and it's almost such a lifestyle that you're going to be around people that are going to be like, why are you crushing a bag of Doritos before you're doing a sprint? Like that doesn't make sense, And so you're going to kind of put yourself around more people that will naturally kind of put you in the healthier lifestyle. Satch, what do you say?
I mean, I think what you mentioned is good. I think for me, it's a bit, I think of it a bit differently. I think for me, the number one thing that I would recommend to anyone who's trying to do anything out of those 3 things would be dial in your sleep.
Yeah.
Because I think the number one thing for me is the sleep factor. So if you're doing all the training, all that, if you're not sleeping, it doesn't matter. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. And now let's say if you're not doing any type of fitness whatsoever, which most people in first responder space are that, if you're looking at the wide range of people, and if they're not going to the gym, I would say before you even tackle your food and all that other stuff, it would be sleep. Because if you can dial in your sleep, that means you're going to have less stress, less
Yeah.
anxiety, less depression, less things that are going to affect your mental health, at least in my experience. And it seems like the literature is kind of saying that kind of stuff too. So sleep. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
also,
like it.
and now also, like, just specifically to what I'm doing, um, studies have been showing out, also the research that I'm doing, and then also testing on myself. The number one recovery tool is sleep over
Yeah.
anything else, over
Yeah.
cold plunge, sauna, sleep. If you can dial in sleep, now you're ahead of the game, way above everything else. So
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because I mean, I agree, and I don't have a particular opinion. I think I lend myself more to the sleep side of things,
Hmm.
because when I was brand new and young and I didn't have any commitments and stuff like that, sleep was always secondary or third,
Yeah.
right? Like, it was like, I get up on my first day off, I got 2 hours worth of sleep. That's good enough. I got stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
And you can run your body on that. You can run your mind on that with a lack of sleep for a while, because we're designed to do that, right? We're designed to do hard things. But when it becomes almost a habit of
Hmm.
running on not even necessarily an amount of sleep, but a quality of sleep, because the quality starts dropping off as well, right? So when that
Yeah.
quality drops off, okay, I was in bed for 6 hours, but maybe I only slept for 2 that were any quality. Then I start noticing, the personality changes, or the ability changes, or my 100% is no longer 100%, it's 80%. And I know for me, for a personal journey as well, like during COVID, when they shut the schools down and stuff like that, I had to look after 2 little girls on my night shift. So I would literally watch them all day, do my night shift, come home, get an hour's worth of sleep, look after them all day again, do my night shift, get 3 hours worth of sleep, and then get up and watch them again. So over 3 days, I got 4 hours worth of sleep for 7 months. And I
Yeah.
tried to make up for it on days off. But man, I bet you that put me in the hospital, just
Yeah.
Listen, man,
for a
but
personal.
I mean, it probably did, man, and probably shortened your life,
Yeah.
probably too. Maybe
Yeah.
a year or two, because that's how significant sleep is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, studies show for first responders and veterans and military personnel, the lack of sleep contributes to heart disease and all these other
Yeah.
sort of issues that people have, right? So, um, it
Is it
sounds
Europe that
so.
it's,
Sorry.
or sorry, I was going to say, is it Europe that it's shift work's considered a carcinogen now? I think it was in
I
Europe or
don't know. I
something.
mean, you know what? Probably Europe, because they do all kinds of stuff over
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
I think like, it sounds pretty innocuous. Oh, sleep better. But man, it's
Mhm.
hard work, man, to do it
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I know for me, over the last year or so, I've been trying to improve my sleep because I need to recover from training.
Yeah.
And now it's so funny. Now I'm taking it seriously. Like,
Yeah.
18
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
working in law enforcement, I didn't take it
Yeah.
seriously. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, now I'm taking it seriously.
Yeah.
So, like, man, I'm in bed at like 8:30, 9
Yeah.
p.m. Lights are off. Try to cool my room. I still mess up with certain things, like, I have my phone with me and all that kind of stuff. But
Mm.
I do consistently try to do that. And what I notice is that my sleep and my recovery is becoming better. Like, I'm actually getting better sleep. It's taken some time because I have had to reverse a lot of the the shift work that, kind of, it gets ingrained. So it took me a while to kind of get to where I'm at now, where the circadian rhythms kind of working in the right way. And man, it's a huge difference. You start noticing, like, man, I can move better, I can think bit clearer, I can, like, I 2 days I went out for a run yesterday, and it was a train, a bit more of a speed run, where I was trying to work on more of my speed, but I ran 13K, right? And running 13K, it would, I'll put this in perspective. 13K is not a big deal for me at this point, right? So it's just a decent day. But considering I was working on pacing and trying to, I was working more at a higher intensity because I was running faster. So generally after those types of workouts, I get a bit more tired. I need a little bit more recovery to heal after that. Man, I woke up today, I was good. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I was good. I had a good sleep, got a good 8 hours. And I had another run today. I just went for
That's
a good
awesome.
45
Mhm.
minutes. And so you can kind of, I notice it now, the sleep, man. And I'm like, man, okay, yeah, I did
Yeah.
dial in the sleep,
Yeah.
because, man,
Yeah.
performance increases.
Well,
That's
and
awesome.
I want to touch base on that too, because I think you bring up a really interesting point about having to work at it. Because when I think of sleep, I think that's something I know how to do, right? I go upstairs, I go to bed, I go to sleep, I wake up in the morning. Like it's pretty autonomic, right? But when we think of training, we think of perfecting or getting a rhythm down or maximizing things. We think of training like fitness. We think of nutrition. We read books. We watch people. We adjust based off of results that we're getting. But sleep, we go to bed. Maybe somebody says, yeah, I shouldn't have my phone with me because of the blue light and all the rest of it. And, my wife watches TV and I go to sleep and all the rest of it. But we never feed back into that loop as to what is working for us. So it might have worked 6 months ago, but now it's not working again. But I'm going to do it because that's how I got good sleep. So I'm going to keep doing it. So I think that from even like a first responder or anybody who's working shift work, you have to put as much effort into how you sleep
Yes.
and how you do fitness. So I was curious because I know, again, you're a certified sleep and stress recovery coach. What is the science behind that? Like what is the thought process on what I just said there?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And everything Satch is saying is like 100% because if there's no sense, it's almost like eustress versus distress, right? So eustress is good stress you're putting on your body. Distress is bad stress you're putting on your body. And it's acute versus chronic and this and that, right? So like Satch was talking about, right? You're stressing your body and then you're recovering. You're stressing your body and then you're recovering and you're pushing your limit of what you're able to do. But if you're not sleeping and if you're not recovering, you can't push that limit. That's where your body starts to break. That's where you're. So like, for instance, on the week that we were having the manhunt for Buddy, I worked my full rotation. And then on my days off, I worked all those days off. And then I worked the next rotation. So I worked, whatever it was, 12-day stretch. And I was my coach at the time he said, you're not doing your 1 rep max squat cleans today. You're burnt out. You're grumpy because I was just like an Eeyore walking around. I was mad at everything. And he's like, no, like, don't do 1 rep max squat cleans. And I was like, yeah, now I'm gonna, because I was stubborn and dumb. So I was like, watch me. Well, I hadn't slept. I was stressed as all hell. And my buddy was still in the hospital. So his body was just primed for something to go sideways. And I was just doing a warm-up weight for a squat clean and something let go in the back. And it wasn't anything serious. It was just a lot of like muscle tightened up really bad and pinched on the nerve. But that set me back a good little bit, right? And then as soon as I stood up, I looked at him and he's like, you just threw out your back, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, but I was primed for it. If I knew that now, right, I'm like, of course I wouldn't do a 1 rep max squat clean. That's a stupid idea, but wasn't sleeping. So my body was already at a stress state. And then I go in and I try to lift a bar and catch it in a squat position. Like, good luck, bud. So yeah, sleep's huge. Matthew Walker is a genius. I know, Satch, you've definitely read his book, Why We Sleep. One of my coaches actually, whenever I was really struggling with sleep and shift work and evidence surveillance and all this stuff, he was like, you got to read this book. And it's been really game changer for sure. That's where I really realized how important it is.
Yeah, if you don't get 8 hours of sleep, ideally, all cause mortality goes up like over 100%.
Yeah.
Now I'm exaggerating, but it's a significant percentage where it actually goes up. So like, that's why first responders, heart disease, diabetes, freaking like all kinds of different ailments, IBS, obviously the mental health pieces, depression, anxiety, all these different things, they just skyrocket, man, because sleep.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Now I'm trying to remember. I had a perfect question for you when you were talking about that, Deven. But when you threw your back out, for instance, I know the old school way of thinking, or maybe it's still the new school, but when I was really heavily into, working out and powerlifting and things like that, it was like, you had a bad day, get in the gym, lift heavy, right? Like, get it out in the gym. And I know there's a science behind that, but it sort of sounds like what you're saying is that might not be the best approach depending on what's going on with you.
No, for sure. So that was one of the things with the course is you have your different kind of your outside factors, right? And that's the biggest thing I find with RTF is I don't focus on your 1 rep max or this or that. Yeah, we use that as kind of a judging factor for making progress. But if you're happy and your overall health is better, I don't care about your lifting as much as if you're sleeping well. Like that's the first thing I start with clients is like, okay, how much are you sleeping? It's on my intake form. Your sleep, what's disrupting your sleep? What's your pre-sleep ritual? Then I go into, your nutrition and all this stuff. But you got like your social factors, physical factors, emotional, environmental, mental, existential. So it's all your outside elements, right, that are going to affect your overall health. So if you're stressed as hell at work and then you're fighting with the missus at home, and then I'm going to try to get you to go in and have a 1 rep max day, and you're already super stressed from this stuff, well, that ain't going to go good. So it's a matter of managing it all, right? And that's a big thing. I always check in with clients constantly, and we do weekly check-ins, and it's always check in to make sure that there's not one thing that's getting out of whack. And if there is, then okay, fair enough. Let's pull back on the intensity. Like, I feel super burnt out whenever I'm at the gym. Okay, well, how's work been? Well, I've been working 3 nights of overtime. Imagine that, So then I'm like, okay, let's pull back on the intensity. I change up the programming, and then we pull back on the intensity so that they can get recovered, so that we can try to get back on track, right? So, yeah, I think everything's connected. It's surprising, really.
So who's the worst? Like, obviously, I mean, through your business, it's probably not just first responders and things like that, but for all of our listeners who aren't first responders, like the people that are sort of putting that one thing that's out of whack and all the rest of it, is there a particular type? Is there a particular person, gender, thing like that who's doing that? Like what's the commonality there?
I haven't narrowed it down to one specific thing. I think it's just being in tune with getting that baseline, having that finger. I always say finger on the pulse. What's the normal Deven? Okay, well then whenever and we do that kind of on the intake, right? I'm kind of seeing what you like, what's your hobbies, what's your normal energy level at the gym and all this. And then if anything starts to kind of go out of whack, then you can kind of see like, okay, maybe we're training too hard, or maybe they're burning out a little bit. And even like speaking about burning out, it's not so much burning out, it's under recovering. You're not, your body's able of doing so much and pushing so much, but you got to let the thing recover, right? So, so I can't think that there'd be like one specific person, maybe somebody that's really stubborn, but you got to have a little bit of stubbornness to, train.
I think that's an interesting question, Corey, because like which field, which people, and are the ones that the main culprits, essentially, is what you're saying, right? Asking.
Yeah.
And you know what? I guess in my experience, talking to people, everyone.
I like it.
Yeah.
Because I'd say a high 90-something% of the people I talk to don't know a freaking thing.
Yeah.
I think
just don't, because like I can say, oh, hey, how you eating? Oh, I eat pretty good. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll ask them 3 questions, and it's already done.
Yeah.
It's already done, man.
Yeah.
Like, how you working out? Are you training a lot? Oh yeah, all the time. Okay, tell me exactly what you're doing. It's like, okay, nothing.
Yeah.
So people think they do a lot, or they do enough, but I think people, man, we're just gonna go down the rabbit hole here, but like,
go down it, brother. Go down it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I think people generally do not test themselves, and that's what you always need to do. You have to test yourself, and I'm not talking about the gym. I'm talking everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be an optimized individual, you got to start figuring out not just the gym. That's like a sliver of things that you got to think about. Okay, now if I'm at the gym, we can break that down even further. What kind of physique and body do I need to have or want to have to execute against the things that I want to do? That changes what you're going to be doing. Now, let's say you figured that out. Okay, how do I eat? How do I sleep? Who do I hang out with? Like, I mean, it's like everything. So to answer the question from my perspective, asking people, majority of people aren't doing the things that they should to do to be optimized.
Yeah. And there's a really interesting point here. I was talking to Deven in the green room before we went live here about the idea, especially with first responders, of the I used to's. right?
Yeah.
This is what I used to do before I did this job. And I find it really funny because when I think back to what I used to do, I still identify by what I used to do. So in my mind, what worked back then should work again, even though it's been 15 years. And I'm not the
Yeah.
same person. I don't have the same goals. My body actually reacts differently. You know, the older you get, the better I've been told you get at endurance sports and things like that. But you're still going into the gym like you were 15 years ago and expecting the same results and your body to work the same way. So for our listeners, I think you need to understand that, yeah, you might have been something 10 years ago, but stop having this idea of what you are and look in the mirror today if you want to start optimizing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's funny because one of my nutrition clients that I onboarded, they said my nutrition's, that's what I got to work on, this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is, and then I said, kind of what your stress levels at? How you feel? Oh, I'm always stressed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how about work? Oh, I hate it. Okay. And how much are you sleeping? Oh, I'm not sleeping. Okay. I was like, so
Hey, you
let's
said you wouldn't
start
tell my
there.
story. What are you doing?
Yeah. But I was like, okay, we got to figure out the sleep for sure. And we got to work on this. And then let's slowly work at your nutrition. But all that other stuff, we got to figure out first. Because I don't care if you're having carrots and all the healthy stuff over here. We want to make sure that that's all good. And it's been doing great. They're doing phenomenal. But
Awesome.
that was right. But it's like, no, we got to start back over here first, right? Building blocks.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for you regarding, because I know we know about your sort of journey and things like that, but now that you've been in it for a while, I don't think you're necessarily doing building blocks anymore, but you're building upon those building blocks. For any of our listeners who are sort of where you are, where they've developed their program, they're working their program, they're defining their program, what is sort of the next step from sort of where Deven's initial clients are to where they're successful and they become you? What are the next steps after that?
That's the exciting part. That's where it gets really fun, because you can then so like the beginning stages are, a few years of getting fit, right? Let's say 5 years of really doing something and getting to that stage. Now you're in a place you can have fun, man. Like you can pick things that you kind of want to just do, because you can do pretty much anything, right? Like if you spend time and effort, you can then adapt to that new thing very easily. And I think that's the only reason why I've been able to move relatively quickly in a certain area, is because I had a really good base to work with, lifting weights for like, I don't know, 20 years, competing in bodybuilding for a number of years, and then transitioning into jiu-jitsu, doing that. And so like, and then, wrestling in high school. So like there's a fundamental base that once you get to a certain stage in life, man, it's like for me, I have a wild imagination. So now I get to just think about crazy things that I want to do physically. And those things for me are fun. So that's the exciting. So it's exciting, to answer your question.
Yeah. Awesome. Now,
awesome.
Deven, the question I have as well as for, like I said, our listeners that are coming in, obviously your clients are seeking you out. I'm sure you're probably not cold calling through the telephone book, asking them if they want to do better with their life. So they're coming to you with an idea. But what is it with your, maybe the people that haven't done this before, but want to start getting better? Do you find that there's a difference between what their goals are at the beginning and sort of what their goals are at the end? Like they realize that maybe that wasn't the goal. They want to come to you or weight loss or something like that. And they realize actually that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think I would say it'd be like to get that whole body approach or whole body health, right? They're like, I want to get abs, or I want to get fit, but then all of a sudden they see all this other stuff that they needed to work on. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, and the passion that they get, and they get so excited, and I love seeing that progress with them. But I would say that's the biggest thing is people are, I just want to get fitter, or I'm training to get into the academy. And I'm like, okay, sweet. Like that's the I love those clients because they're just so happy to get into policing, right? Or into firefighting to get the beep test and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I'd say that'd be the biggest thing, is realizing how much they have to work on it, but everything's built out, everything's personalized. There's not a single bit of it's cookie cutter, so everything's built out for the client,
Good.
right? And
that's good.
yeah, Yeah.
You know, I kind of equated to this as you were talking there, Devin. I just was created a construct of that visually in my head. And I almost look at it like the person who's coming to you as a client, um, is learning and is a white belt, right? Or
Yeah.
they're just going through high school.
Yeah.
And then they graduate high school and maybe they get to university. Once you pass the university stage, man, the rest is like that's the fun stuff, right? And when you get to
Yeah.
that part, now you can. So when people come to people, like people come to me or they go to you or whomever, right? They don't know what they don't know yet. So that's the exciting part as someone in the facilitator position. So you can kind of guide them in a direction and, plant seeds in certain areas and then chip away at them over a year or 2 years or however long it takes. And then you can present to them things that they can
Yeah.
start engaging in. And that's the
Yeah.
exciting part because they can look at those things and be like, oh man, I never thought I could do that or that or that. And then it gets fun, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you bring up a really interesting point there with your analogy with the high school and the university is people don't want to start new things because they don't want to spend the next 10 years learning about it. But really what it is you're learning. You're never not learning. Like, let's get that out of the way. But you're learning through high school. You don't really understand it. You get to university, you start learning, you start defining certain things. And then you're done, and then you get to start your career. Now, you're still going to screw it up. You're going to go out not knowing a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still going to get a chance to start refining it. And that's when it starts getting fun because you get to put all of that knowledge to application, right? You're
Mhm.
still learning, you're still refining, but to like take it to your point, that's when it starts getting fun. And I think people miss that. So yeah, okay, you're going to work hard for a couple of years. You're really going to learn. You're really going to go to school on it. Then you're going to start applying stuff. You're not going to be a master, but you're going to be able to do much better. Do you find that
Mhm.
that's something that happens with your clients there, Devin?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I feel like, and I love it whenever I go back, right? So I retest periodically, right, to see where our projections are at, if we're on track, and in the mesocycles and all the kind of as we're going along in the long game. And then I love the reactions, right? Whenever they're like, how much of an increase and how much percent increase? Like they're in it. They're just like, okay, what do I got to do? It's Tuesday. Okay, right on. Sweet. They do it. But they don't see kind of me with my bajillion screens here and I'm kind of crossing over and going to, they don't see the big picture and all of a sudden they're like, holy snap, like right on, that's a huge progress. And seeing that is really, I love that part, is seeing like how far they've come. Or just like how much more, even just getting them on track. Some people just need that accountability. I've had, that was ironic. One client was like, I just need you telling me what to do, man, and I'll do it. And I'm like, all right. Because they just needed the accountability.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah.
How have you found your approach again? Like, you're still active, you're still a police officer. Have you found that your department or other police agencies around there have really started to pay attention to what you're doing? I mean, it's not particularly groundbreaking specifically, like not to downplay what you're doing,
No.
but are they adopting it? Are you finding any success with that?
Yeah, I think it seems to be that it's gaining more and more momentum, and I'm month over month I'm gaining clients, which it's been great. And I think like I said, having that whole body approach and being like, yeah, like night shifts are gonna suck. You're gonna get the munchies at 2 and 3 in the morning because your body's at a high stress state because it wants to be asleep and it wants a quick snap of dopamine and some happy juices. So it's going to want you to stop at the Irving and crush a little hot dog and an energy drink. So let's try to pack ahead of time to get some healthier food in there so we can, like, I think that looking at that kind of be it somebody that's been there, is still there, and kind of understands what they're going through has been really helpful with kind of relating to the clients and being like, yeah, like you're getting into a career, like let's set you up for a long, healthy career as opposed to going out on Friday night and crushing a case with the boys and then we'll do it again on Monday. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to set you up for a long, healthy career, right? You got to set yourself up for that success in the long run, and building blocks, right?
So why do you think, like, everything you're saying makes sense? It's backed up by science. We understand it. We're told this all of our time. Bring your lunch. Bring your lunch because you put healthy stuff in, and then you're going to eat it, right? You're not crushing something at 7-Eleven at 2:00 in the morning and get that salt and sugar hit and stuff like that. What is with it? Why are we as first responders so stupid that we know this? We're told this. We've seen it. We still feel like crap when we go do it, but we continue to do it. What is the reason for that? What's the challenge?
I think it's, I'm going to make myself feel old here, but I'm going to say it's people wanting, like, the generation wanting that quick hit, that quick happiness, not putting in, like Satch was saying, putting in the years of effort and dedication and stuff. I feel like I don't think I pull it a thesaurus here to figure out the words that I'm looking for, but basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like they're just like, oh, if I just go there, that's going to make me happy. And, but you're a first responder or you're a shift worker, like your body's in a high stress state, like, but also being a little bit understanding of, like, yeah, this is what my body's going through. Like, this sucks, but this is why, right? And kind of understanding that too, educating the clients on that seems to help a lot. So they're like, okay, that's why I want to have that food, because of this. Okay, so if I set myself up, then I'll be better. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question there, if I really did need the thesaurus, but
No. I think you did. I think, like I said, because it's not a lack of knowledge. Like, we're not the first group to go through this and figure this out.
Yeah.
I know Such is, has his own journey and we've talked about it many times before. He's really dialing all of that stuff in and knows what works for him. But even though I've been in this career for 18 years, I'm still an idiot every once in a while and get off track. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, you know what's really good? McDonald's. And I'm like, no, it's not good. I'm like, well, you didn't bring a lunch, you idiot. So I guess you have to go to McDonald's. Otherwise you're just going to starve. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And next thing I know, I'm in the drive-thru going, yeah, I would like this. And it's like, I should be intelligent enough to know this. And I know what happens when I do this, but it's almost like it's defiance. It's like,
well, it is, man. Like, because like you said, everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
And what it is in that moment is, like, when you were saying I want to go from McDonald's, right when it popped in my head, it was like, well, you just quit. You just quit on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You just quit on yourself, right? Like, the reality is you can get something. Look, man, I was in the workplace 18 years, right? And I got healthier probably 4 or 5 years into my career, and I just, started dialing things in. So I've been, I understand food and have a pretty good understanding for a number of years. So even when I was working shift work, I knew what to eat. I knew how to eat it, even if I didn't bring it to work. Right. I'm working in an environment. I know the places I can go to. Just because I go to a restaurant and I'm looking at the menu, it doesn't mean I just get what's on the menu. I pay for my food. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, hey, man, can I get this, this, and this? Is it going to be any trouble? How much extra? Okay, I'll pay for it. I do that. I did that all the time. So people are putting themselves in boxes, right? And they're just not thinking outside of it. You can eat healthy if you want to. And the opportunities are always there. And people are just quitting on themselves because it's easier.
Yeah, I like that analogy, quitting on yourself. It's so true, man. That's wicked. It's exactly what it is. I like it.
Yeah,
not the quitting on yourself.
I worked hard.
But the analogy.
Yeah, I worked hard and I gave up on myself for sure. And I'll tell you, man, like I usually when I have done that in the past, obviously I'm not doing that now, but when I was doing that in the past, I realized I am absolutely the most miserable I've been. And again, I want that, hey, food doesn't judge me. Food doesn't say I'm a terrible human being. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go and I'm going to get that shot of happiness, which is no different than getting it out of a shot glass, right? Like it's the same thing. I go up, I order, I feel good, then I feel horrible. Right.
Yeah.
Almost immediately afterwards, because I know I've let myself down, right? I've given up on myself. And then it's this perpetuating loop that I'm sure a lot of our listeners can think of. It's like, yeah, when it went bad, it went really bad. And I didn't just have one beer. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't do that. If we could do that, we wouldn't have a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I relate to that.
Yeah. But Deven, like I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Cause like I said, I only have the first responder thing. And obviously my spouse is not a first responder. And she doesn't necessarily have these same issues. But I know all the people that I work with, I keep going back to the first responder thing.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the discipline that we always say that we do, why are we failing with the discipline side of things? Because I'm in a very regimented job. Like there is a
Mhm.
right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things, and there's consequences when you don't do it properly. Yet when it comes to taking care of myself, I make all the wrong decisions.
Yeah. That's a tough one. I think it's well, can be sometimes it can be like a decision fatigue. Like I hear that a lot with first responders. They're like, I don't care, man, whatever, just whatever. Like, you hear a lot the police, whenever they're, what do you want for supper? And then you're like, I don't, whatever, pick it, because we
Decision
don't want to
fatigue,
make
yeah.
another decision,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tough one.
I mean, or you think,
Actually,
like a tired mom, right?
yeah. They're just like,
can
whatever,
you
go on
repeat
the
the
computer.
question again? Sorry, Corey, can you repeat the question again? Because I thought I just, my idea slipped through me, so I didn't hear it again.
Well, I was saying like with me as a first responder, and obviously I'm referring to that, it's a very disciplined job, right? There's a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things, and then there's a consequence to not doing it properly.
Got it.
So,
Yep.
yep.
So
So,
I think what it is like it's hard to do something for the very first time, right? So I think what it is like you have to start building blocks of new behavior patterns,
Yeah.
and to shift all of them for some people can be extremely challenging. So I think you have to backstep it a little bit, and maybe to start, maybe for a month or something, you're still eating that food at work that one time only,
mhm.
and the rest of the day you dial everything in, or you try to just figure out baby steps to get to that stage, because I think a lot of times people just don't have the skill sets or the patterns developed enough on a regular basis to encourage repeat behavior.
Mhm.
So you almost have to train it in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then the other question that I have is obviously by making these behaviors almost automatic, we train them in. But Devin, maybe you have a bit of an example with this. Do you find that it's better to give somebody more of a fluid way of doing that, like where there is the guardrails aren't quite as close together, or do you find that you get more success with people who have a very rigid way of doing things?
I think it's just what's been really successful with me and with clients has been just adding in more healthier choices or adding in better habits. And then they don't have time for the unhealthy stuff, right?
Mm,
If I'm training at the gym, well, I'm not going to have time to go out and train or drink with the boys, or you know what I mean? Or if well, the big thing with me was I started working out in the mornings because then I would go to bed early because I had to get up early to train. So I'm going to go to bed early and I'm going to make sure I get a good night's rest because I got to go in and work out in the morning. So it almost doubled up my
Mm.
good habits just by doing that one little switch, and I wouldn't have drinks in the evening because I didn't want to feel like a bag of milk at the gym in the morning. So
Mm.
that's,
like,
yeah, what I mean? So
yeah.
just setting those good habits up, I find, and not just hammering them with, okay, you're going to do this, this, this. Have you heard of keto? Like, and then there's like you can't just
Yeah.
hammer them with a bunch of things. It's definitely bit by bit.
Yeah, and I think another way of thinking about it too, at least for me sometimes, is all I need to do is lock them in for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If I get you locked in for 2 weeks, you're going to do the rest for me,
Yeah.
because you're going to start seeing the results. You've worked hard for those 2 weeks. So if you break it down to a 2 week frame, sometimes that can work too. And then
Yeah.
they can see the results through that. And then third week, fourth week, they can see their results, and then it's easier.
Yeah.
You almost kind of let them lead the way.
Mm.
Yeah. I like it.
Now, Devin, what's the question I always like to know from people is obviously through your journey and everything that you've accomplished so far, while still holding on to what you were doing before, what's been the most surprising thing? Like what has been something that you didn't expect you would come across or learn or encounter that you have sort of on your journey?
Oof, there you go. I don't know. I think that it's got so much potential. Like RTF's been great and it's growing great, but just how much positive responses come from members, off record, right? Where they're like, hey, like, I really appreciate you speaking out about your struggles with mental health or breaking down those barriers and things like that, because there's such a stigma with it in first responders, and in everywhere's, and it is getting more to the more open about it side, but I feel like just the positive response, right? A lot, like I said, when in my first parts of my career, I wouldn't talk about if I was struggling or if we went to a suicide and it bothered me or this or that call. You just push it down, step on it, and shove it down in there and leave her be. And then, so yeah, the fact that I opened up about it, and whenever management asked me on day 2, like, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm not good. There's like, okay, yeah, well, let's get you some help, right? And it was just like a weight was off my chest. Like I was like, I'm not good and I need help. So I
It's
think,
awesome,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
I think
that was big.
the more people speak out like you have and like you do, I think I think that's how the stigma is kind of subsiding a bit, right? So I think
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
yeah, appreciate it.
And I guess the other question is obviously we've talked about stigma on this podcast a little bit, like we haven't really touched base on it too much, but with the stigma and everything that's coming out, because there's quite a movement now about acknowledging mental health, right? Like it's almost a culture within itself, is acknowledging your mental health and doing what you need to. And obviously coming from, the organization that I'm in, it's fairly old school. It has started to develop programs and things, and it's gotten a lot better in acknowledging that people need to look after this. But why are we still continuing to find that stigma, even though the culture is there, amongst common everyday people?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's shifting. That's hard. I think it's just that I always say the old school mentality, but I think, and there's more and more research on, like, before that, in that mind body connection too, right? Like you look at like IBS, like your gut microbiome and all that, it's all connected to your brain. So, stress levels, you look at shift workers, how many of us have IBS issues? A ton of us have digestion issues. Well, that's because we're stressed, and every time that phone rings, you're like, "Oh God, what's this call?" Yeah, exactly, right?
Get your kombucha in.
Yeah, get the kombucha.
Kombucha fan here. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there's more and more research and more connection with that. So now more and more people are like, okay, like there is a connection between the two, and it isn't just Johnny's got the toots. Like, no, it's because he's stressed as can be at work, and he's got to manage all these newbies, and then he's not fueling right, or this and that. He's not taking care of himself, and so yeah, I think just maybe research and science is kind of catching up to it all.
Yeah, I think it's started, man, but I think like for culture to shift is time.
Yeah.
And it's only been a few. Really, the conversation's been 5 years ish, maybe a little bit longer, right? 10.
Oh yeah.
Let's say 10. I mean, to shift culture, I think it'll take another 10, and I think things will be significantly different.
Yeah, I think it needs to develop, not only just to have, as we were saying, have the processes in place, but have the processes be put and stress test. Right? Like they have to be stress tested in order to see what's working. And it's great on paper, but when first responders, man, you mentioned before, stubborn, right?
Oh yeah.
You want me to do this? Well, guess what? I'm not doing that. And it's true. Like, even though we know we should, and there's that voice in our head, that's saying, hey, you know what? Maybe you should listen to that. And I'm like, no, nobody tells me what to do. I'm doing the exact opposite. They don't want me to eat butter. That's fine. I'm eating an entire tub of butter. I'll show them. Right. Yeah. Like, and we're our own worst enemies, right? When it comes to that sort of stuff. And I think most people are. If you tell them not to do something, they're going to consider doing it. Even if they don't want to do it, they're going to consider doing it. So I think when that culture changes, I think you have to, like I said, you have to stress test it. You have to put it into service. You have to stress test it, and you have to be okay with it failing. And you can't take that as personal, like this should work. These people aren't doing it properly, right? It should work. And if we're not emotionally invested in it working right the first time and being perfect, then I think we start getting that change coming out. I mean, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Now, the other question that I had too was regarding. Let's see if I can get this right here. Go almost a whole hour here without flubbing it, and I'll make sure I flub it in the last 5 minutes here. But
Perfect.
with that culture change and us looking after ourselves more, are you finding that people are being more open about talking about it? I know you mentioned you were talking about it, Deven, but do you find that people are able to talk a little bit more freely? Obviously, the stigma is still there, but they're getting more out of talking, I guess is maybe what I should say.
Yeah, I feel like it has, even just, locally. Like, I think that even just like, for instance, chatting with somebody at the gym, and they were like, do you find that it's like really helping you talking about it? I was like, actually it is. It's kind of like a weight off the chest. And, and then it makes me feel like I'm not, because the thing is, you feel alone, right? You feel like, I'm the only one that's like this, or like the world's coming to an end and this and that. And it'd be better off if I wasn't here. You kind of go down that rabbit hole of the thoughts, right? But whenever you hear of somebody else having that issue, or somebody else struggling with that, you're like, you struggle with it too? Yeah. Well, what did you do? And then all of a sudden, like, that was crazy how many people even at the gym would talk and help me out. And I'm just like, man, like, thanks so much for chatting about it. Just kind of, I feel like that was a big thing. Like, that was really eye opening. Like, wow, like, there's so much more of it around that they suffer in silence. They don't say anything about it, right? So, it helped me a lot in my recovery. People being like, yeah, man, I'm struggling too. And I'm like, oh, fuck, let's get through this together. Like,
I think part of the
shared,
problem,
right?
yeah, no, exactly. I think as you were talking, I was thinking about it, and I think part of the problem is when you're dealing with something, you're a victim. So you have that, so you don't want to tell anyone because you're a victim. You're like, you're keeping it to yourself, right? So yeah, we all know, and I mean, we all know, like, oh, break the stigma, talk this, that, and the other. But physiologically, I think there's something that's preventing you from doing it because you're in that victim state, right?
Yeah.
And what I think might be helpful in the workplace is having leaders there, or people who've been through things that have recovered through the process, to recognize those, and then being able to then engage and then have that conversation, so that like you were saying, Deven, like, it made things easier when the conversation happens. But I think that to start it, it's hard, man, when you're in that state.
Yeah. And I always say rumination is the ruination of a career, because it's so true, right? Rumination among, just focusing on the negatives. You got to, like, just push through and look at the positives. Just, some clients, that's legit. At every Sunday, give me 2 things you're grateful for. Find something, right? Lie to me. Figure out something, right? But and it's crazy how much, like, yeah, like, it was a great week this week. I got all my workouts in. I'm like, perfect. Right? Like, that gratitude and that mindfulness, and just, I feel like just by doing that and not ruminating and being like, yeah, this was a messed up incident and it messed me up, but we're on the other side of it and we're going to get better and we're just going to keep pushing on. Right? Like, I even have my background on my phone it says one more step, and it's legit just one more step. Just keep going in the right direction and we're going to get there. Right? So it's just a constant reminder, right? Just keep pushing through.
Yeah. And I think to Such's point as well, with that victim idea, is there's a lot of shame that's involved. Like, when I deal with victims through my job, there's a lot of shame, and it's not even so much that it's happened, but that they feel that they allowed it to happen, even though they didn't. They had no control over that situation, but now they don't want to come forward. And I think that applies a lot to those in the first responder community and those dealing with these issues, is that there's this unconscious shame that they can't resolve because they weren't the cause of it, but they're still dealing with it, right?
But totally.
Yeah.
And we're so used to being in control of the situation, right? Like, you're so used to being, like, court, at a call, right? And you go there and you're supposed to solve the issue. Well, all of a sudden there's something going on and you have no control over it. And, then your body goes into that panic state. So I think, it's just kind of understanding that and being like, yeah, like we can retrain it, we can push through it. And like Zach said, like a 13K run now is like, right? Like, but it wasn't like that probably when you restarted, Satch. Like
Oh
it
no,
wasn't,
man!
yeah,
Like
right?
3 years. Like I used to watch people like, how can you run 10K a day? How can you run 5K a day? Like I used to say that. I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh man, people are running 10K. Whoa! Like that would be like. Now I'm like, now I'm happy and proud of the effort and work I put in over a number of years to get to a place where my body can do some pretty cool things that
Yeah.
I never thought it could do. And for me, man, that makes me feel pretty awesome that it's a tangible thing. People think the mind and the body are two separate things. That I mean, you're one entity, you're one unit, man. If your body is like optimized, your brain is likely going to be optimized, and you're going to feel more positive about things because you're also getting dopamine hits by seeing yourself do things that are positive, that are healthy. So there's so many benefits to it. But anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool to
Yeah.
be able to run a lot.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
It's awesome.
So Deven, love having you on. I think we're coming to the end on this particular visit, but we'd love to have you back. How do people
100%.
get a hold of you? How do people reach out to you and your social media and stuff?
Yeah, so it's resiliencethroughfitness.com. And then at Resilience Through Fitness is Instagram. Same thing for Facebook. Or they can just fire me an email if they want, Deven at resiliencethroughfitness.com. If they want every like consults, all that's free. If they just want to have a yarn and have a chat or somebody for an open ear, like I'm here. It's all good. We'll get through it together. So
Awesome.
That's awesome. Good
What
stuff.
do you have coming
Thanks,
up?
buddy.
Anything?
Actually, well, I'm gonna have to pick Satch's brain at some point here because we're kind of training for kind of a backyard ultra here locally
Oh, yeah?
at the national park. So yeah, we're kind of building up gradually with our running and working on some unilateral stuff. And
Okay, I have a few questions. Give me a second here.
yeah.
When is it?
So it's going to be in June.
Is it the typical format for the backyard ultra, 6.7 kilometers, 150 elevation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're
And what do
building like so we got 1 long, 2 medium, and 3 short runs a week.
here's a question though. What's your goal for the event?
I'd like to make it 10 hours. That's if I can make it to 10 hours.
So the 10 hours would be what, 67 kilometers?
Yeah, 67K.
What's the elevation on that then? That'd be 1,500. So incorporate elevation training.
Yeah, I like it.
For any of the listeners that are still here listening to this, I'm sure it's quite fascinating. We'll take this offline.
Okay, sorry.
No problems. Yeah, you said you had a couple of questions. I'm like, oh, this will be interesting, but no, deal with this
because
offline.
I'm trying to dial in what he's doing.
100%.
Yeah, I like it.
Such, what do you got coming up?
Yeah, man, I just want to let everyone know, March 30th, we have the fundraising gala, A Night to Inspire. Tickets are on sale now at event. I have everything I'll post up on my social media on Instagram. So hit me up there. If you have any questions, hit me up. We have a lineup of phenomenal speakers, all from the veteran, first responder, and civilian community. So everyone from our communities speaking on mental health and how it's impacted them. It'll be a fun evening with catered dinner and drinks. So March 30th, hit me up if you want some tickets.
Fantastic. And they can get a hold of you on social media, send you a message, and go from there. And I know you've got stuff up there that'll direct them to where they need to go. But from all of us here at the Third Perspective Podcast, thanks very much for coming along with us on another week. And we can't wait to see you next week. So until next week, thanks very much, guys.
Yeah.